Welcome to the Talking Ketamine podcast, the show where we explore the science behind this fascinating molecule. This is episode 36, the electrodynamics of ketamine.
Thanks for joining us. Today we're looking at a new paper that proposes a radical idea. That consciousness isn't just in our brain cells, but in the electromagnetic fields they generate. And that psychedelics, especially ketamine, give us a unique window into how that works.
Yeah, it's a huge concept shift, isn't it? We've talked a lot about the chemistry, NMDA receptors, glutamate cascades, but this deep dive, we're really shifting focus to the physics of how the brain might compute things.
Exactly.
The paper looks at LSD, psilocybin too, but for you listening, our mission today is really to get into this core theory, this electrodynamic model, and specifically what it tells us about ketamine. Why does it cause dissociation? How does it fragment these brain fields?
It's a fascinating reframing. Moving beyond just neurons firing to ask, well, what's the actual medium? Is the field itself the software?
Okay, so let's unpack that core idea. The paper calls it the general resonance theory, or GRT, and it challenges this, standard view that consciousness is all about synapses firing, right?
That's right, yeah. GRT suggests consciousness doesn't primarily come from that relatively slow process, the synaptic transmission, the spikes between cells. Instead, the idea is it emerges from resonant electromagnetic field interactions. The field itself, the electrical waves, that's the substrate. Neural firing, that's providing the energy to keep the field going, to sustain the computation in the field.
Okay, so neurons power it up, but the waves carry the actual information, the unified experience. This must tackle that big problem the paper mentions, the cortical speed trap.
It absolutely does. I mean, if consciousness only relied on spikes, information moves too slowly, maybe, 120 meters per second?
Which sounds fast, but maybe not fast enough for a unified experience.
Exactly, but electromagnetic waves. In the brain tissue, they're zipping along at something like 47,000 meters per second.
Whoa, okay, that's hard to even grasp. 47,000 meters per second.
Yeah, it's about a 40,000-fold reduction in latency compared to action potentials.
40,000 times faster. So it's like upgrading from dial-up to light speed for brain communication.
Pretty much. That near-instant speed is what lets the brain integrate information from all over, almost simultaneously, giving us that single coherent feeling of now.
So without this field speed, would experiences feel fragmented? Like seeing something happen before you hear it, but on a millisecond scale across everything.
That's the implication, yeah. Our world perception would likely be disjointed. And it's not just speed. GRT points out huge advantages in, efficiency too. Field dynamics allow for maybe 10,000 times more parallel processing handling information simultaneously compared to spikes.
10,000 times more.
And it's roughly 1,000 times more energy efficient as well.
Okay, that's a compelling evolutionary argument. Speed, parallelism, energy saving. It makes sense the brain would use fields. But wait, if the field is the medium, what stops, random electrical noise or static electricity from creating consciousness? Or even muscle activity? Is there a filter?
Ah, that's crucial. The field has to be coherent and resonant. It's not just any electrical activity. Think of it like a radio receiver. They're static everywhere, right? But you only get the music when you tune into a specific, clear, resonant frequency.
Okay, got it.
So neural firing provides the power, but only the coherent, resonant patterns, maybe in specific frequency bands like gamma waves, actually constitute the integrated conscious state.
Right, that makes sense. Coherence is key. Which brings us back to ketamine. Because the paper sets it up as, the odd one out. It doesn't seem to enhance coherence like other psychedelics might.
Exactly. It's the perfect counterpoint.
Yeah.
If you look at, say, LSD or psilocybin, the classic serotonergics, the theory describes them as kind of field resonance enhancers.
Yeah.
Subjectively, people report feelings of unity, right? Boundaries dissolving, connection.
Yeah, oneness with the universe, that kind of thing.
Which theoretically means the underlying electromagnetic field is becoming more coherent, more globally synchronized.
But ketamine does the opposite. It's a dissociative. It splits things apart.
Precisely. Ketamine seems to fragment the field. The main effect is dissociation. That feeling of being disconnected from your body, from your surroundings, even observing your own thoughts like an outsider. Reality feels,
unreal.
Dreamlike.
And then there's the extreme end, the K-hole. If a unified field equals an integrated self, what's the K-hole electrodynamically speaking?
The K-hole looks like the ultimate fragmentation, a temporary, almost catastrophic collapse of that global unified field. Our sense of our self-identity seems to just depend on this large-scale, continuous synchronization.
Okay.
When that coherence breaks down completely under high-dose ketamine, the integrated self just stops operating for a bit. Instead of one big orchestra playing together, you get loads of little bands all playing different tunes loudly, completely out of sync.
Fragmented hyperactivity. Okay, so we need the mechanism. How does ketamine do that? The paper links it to its main action, right?
Yeah.
Blocking NMDA receptors.
Yes, it's an NMDA receptor antagonist, and this is where it gets a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
Blocking an excitatory receptor.
Yeah.
You'd think that would quiet things down.
Yeah.
Less excitation, right?
But often, ketamine actually increases local firing rates, causes bursts of activity.
Huh. How does that work?
It comes down to which NMDA receptors it blocks most effectively. Differential sensitivity.
Ah, so it's not hitting all NMDA receptors the same way.
Exactly. It turns out the NMDA receptors on certain inhibitory neurons, these GABAergic interneurons, are more sensitive to ketamine than the ones on the main excitatory cells, the pyramidal neurons.
Inhibitory neurons.
Uh,
So the brain's brakes.
That's a great analogy the paper uses, yeah. These interneurons act like the braking system, enforcing rhythm and coordinating activity.
Okay.
Ketamine preferentially blocks the NMDA receptors on these brakes.
So it takes the brakes off.
Effectively, yes. It reduces the inhibitory control over the main excitatory cells.
Okay, I see. So you remove the brakes, and the local engines, the pyramidal cells, just start revving like crazy, uncontrolled.
Precisely. You get this state of fragmented hyperactivity. Local circuits go wild because the coordinating inhibition is weakened. But they can't connect properly. They can't form those large, coherent global patterns needed for unified consciousness.
That's the idea. They become like islands of intense activity, but isolated from each other.
Okay, so that's the mechanism disinhibition leading to fragmented hyperactivity. Now, what does this look like electrically? If we measure the brain's fields with EEG or ECOG, what's the signature of this fragmentation?
What you see in the recordings is this really interesting trade-off. Locally, within those islands, you actually see increased power in the electrical signals. The local fields are strong, noisy even.
Right, because of the hyperactivity.
But when you look at the coordination between regions, things like phase locking or synchronization,
It drops off a cliff.
dramatically decreases, yes. The different brain areas are sort of shouting loudly on their own, but they're completely out of sync with each other.
So lots of noise, but no coherent signal across the network. And this lack of synchrony correlates with feeling dissociated.
Directly. The paper mentions findings like aberrant gamma bursts, these intense spikes of high-frequency activity. But crucially, they failed to synchronize across different brain regions. This likely reflects the breakdown in binding different features of perception together.
And isn't there a key connection that gets disrupted between specific lobes?
Yes, a really crucial one. Coherence analysis shows significantly decreased synchronization between the frontal and parietal regions.
Which are absolutely critical for that sense of integrated self, planning, spatial awareness, basically being a coherent person in the world.
Exactly. So this electromagnetic decoupling between frontal and parietal areas is, in measurable terms, the dissociation people report subjectively.
Wow. Okay, and there was one more piece, something about brain layers, layer-specific isolation.
Right. This adds another layer of detail, excuse the pun, distinguishing ketamine from, say, LSD.
Okay, maybe simplify this bit. Layers V and 3F. It gets technical.
Let's try the city analogy again. The cortex has layers, like floors in a building. Layer V neurons, which seem to be more affected by LSD or psilocybin, are like the big, citywide radio broadcast towers. Powerful global signals. LSD might make that broadcast louder and more synchronized across the whole city field expansion, unity.
Okay, the big broadcasters. And ketamine.
Ketamine seems to primarily mess with layer 2 and 3 circuits. These aren't the big broadcasters. Think of them more like the local phone lines or neighborhood networks connecting adjacent areas horizontally across the cortex.
Ah, the local connections.
Right. So when ketamine disrupts these layer 3 local lines, the individual neighborhoods, those computational islands, can still be very active internally, generating strong local fields, but they lose the ability to coordinate with each other across the city. They can't merge into that single unified citywide experience.
Creating isolated islands of intense activity that can't talk to each other properly. That's a really clear way to put it. So, according to this new theory, Ketamine's unique dissociative effects come from its ability to shatter the brain's unified electromagnetic field into isolated, fragmented pieces.
Exactly. By disrupting those key inhibitory circuits, primarily in layers 3, it leads to this measurable breakdown in global coherence, even amidst local hyperactivity.
And this connects back to the therapeutic side too, doesn't it?
It does. The paper puts forward this intriguing idea about ketamine's rapid antidepressant effects.
Right, the electromagnetic reset.
Exactly. If you think of depression as maybe being characterized by overly rigid, stuck, unhealthy patterns in the brain's electromagnetic field.
Like the brain is stuck in a negative feedback loop, electrically speaking.
Sort of, yeah. A rigid, low flexibility, maybe low coherence state. Then maybe a treatment that causes a total temporary disruption of all field patterns.
Yep.
A complete disintegration, like ketamine does. Perhaps that forces the system to reboot.
Like shaking up a snow globe really hard, it forces the patterns to resettle, hopefully into a healthier, more flexible configuration.
That's the truly provocative implication. It suggests consciousness requires not just brain activity, but coherent, resonant field activity. And the paper proposes that ketamine's rapid antidepressant effect might come from this temporary electromagnetic reset, a total disruption of the rigid, unhealthy field patterns seen in depression.
It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? From just modulating chemicals to potentially tuning or disrupting the brain's electromagnetic dynamics directly.
Precisely. It opens up possibilities for thinking about mental health and consciousness in a whole new physical framework.
Mind-bending stuff indeed. Thinking of our sense of self as a kind of resonant frequency. Thank you for guiding us through this really complex but fascinating theory and how ketamine fits in. We really encourage you, the listener, to keep digging into these ideas. The science of consciousness is constantly evolving, and it doesn't get much deeper than this. Thanks for joining us.